Welcome to this deep dive. You might have noticed this term "great pause" popping up more often.
Yeah, it seems to be everywhere lately, especially when people talk business and, well, the general economic uncertainty.
Exactly. And it feels like companies are, reconsidering things. We know our listeners want to get up to speed quickly without wading through endless reports.
Right. No getting bogged down.
So today we're digging into why exactly we're hearing the word pause so much from CEOs. What's behind it?
That's the plan. If you need to be well-informed, fast maybe for a meeting or just, to grasp the bigger picture this is for you, we'll unpack what this pause talk really means right now.
Okay, let's do it. It really does feel like just very recently this word pause is just everywhere. Earnings calls, news headlines.
It's a definite trend. Our sources are highlighting that more and more CEOs are specifically using that word, pause, when they discuss their outlook, their decisions.
It's not just a throwaway word then. It feels significant.
I think it is. It's fascinating how one simple word can kind of capture this whole complex feeling of economic anxiety. And, our sources actually point to maybe one specific moment that really amplified it. Remember President Trump's Truth Social post, April 9th.
About the tariffs, right?
Yeah, exactly. He used pause, all caps, talking about a potential tariff adjustment. And the markets reacted almost instantly, positively.
Ah, okay. So that kind of gave the word some prominence, a specific weight.
It seems like it did. It put it front and center in the business conversation.
And now CEOs are using it more broadly, not just about tariffs, it seems.
That's right. It's become this way to acknowledge, look, things are really uncertain, but without, totally shutting things down.
So signaling caution, but maybe keeping a bit of hope alive, like maybe things will get clearer soon.
Precisely. It communicates caution, but it keeps their options open. Pausing buys them time, essentially. Time to see how things shake out before making big moves they might regret.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's look at some real-world examples then. How is this actually playing out?
Good idea. We've got a few different sectors represented here. First up, Keith Lambert. He's the CEO of Oxidizers.
Pollution control equipment, right?
Yeah, and services. He mentioned that this whole ambiguity around tariffs is making his company, and crucially his clients, very hesitant. It's even hitting hiring.
Hesitant how? Like delaying decisions?
Exactly. He used this phrase, called it a pregnant pause.
A pregnant pause. That's evocative.
Isn't it? It really captures that feeling of like being stuck in limbo, just waiting for something crucial to happen before you can move.
And you can see why that affects hiring. That's a big commitment.
It absolutely is, especially if your clients are also pausing their own spending because of the same uncertainty. Why take on new long-term costs?
Okay, so that's Oxidizers. What about Catalent Solutions? Megan Gluth.
Right, she's the CEO there. Chemical manufacturing and distribution. Similar story, really.
Hitting the brakes too?
Delaying capital spending projects specifically. And she mentioned putting a, quote, pause on signing all those contracts. Again, directly linked to tariff uncertainty.
And these aren't small decisions, are they? Capital projects can be huge investments.
Absolutely. Think new facilities, major equipment upgrades. These things rely on long-term forecasts. But if tariffs could blow up those forecasts, the risk skyrockets.
So pausing protects capital, keeps things flexible.
That seems to be the strategy. Preserve cash, preserve flexibility until the path forward is clearer.
It's not just sort of medium-sized companies either. Acuity, the industrial tech company.
Yeah, they used the word too. On an earnings call, actually.
Yeah.
They talked about the tariff policy announcement back in early April as a kind of supply shock.
A supply shock, okay.
And their CEO, Neil Ashe, was direct. He said their lighting business would, quote, take a pause to figure out the implications.
So even the big players are feeling the need to just wait a beat, assess things.
It seems like it. When you face a potential disruption to your supplies, the cost, the availability, taking a pause lets you rethink things. Supply chains, pricing, maybe even your whole model before you commit further.
What's interesting, though, is that this feeling, this pause, it wasn't only triggered by those recent tariff talks, was it?
That's a really good point. No, it seems the roots go a bit deeper.
Like with BGSF,
Yeah.
the staffing firm.
Exactly. They reported what they called a slight pause way back in mid-March. This was in the sort of post-presidential election optimism.
So before the big tariff headlines in April.
Right. Their CEO, Beth Garvey, she still talked about cautious optimism, but that hesitation, that pause, was already creeping in.
Which suggests what? that it's not just tariffs driving this.
I think so. It points to maybe broader economic worries, maybe geopolitical stuff, maybe just general uncertainty about where policy is headed. It's likely multifaceted.
And we saw it internationally too, didn't we? With Green First Forest Products.
Yeah, the Canadian Lumber Company. Also mid-March, on an investor call, they said it was prudent to pause certain elements of their plans.
Why?
To study potential tariff impacts, again, but also explicitly to protect their balance sheet. So global economic jitters are definitely part of the mix.
Okay, so taken together, these examples really show the strategy behind this word pause.
I think they do. It's a simple, clear way for a company to tell everyone, investors, stakeholders, hey, we're being careful here. Things are uncertain, so we're waiting before making big moves.
Moves that could look really bad really quickly if things change.
Exactly. Especially when you think about something like, say, rejiggering your entire supply chain.
Right. That's not a quick fix.
Not at all. Erin McLaughlin from the conference board, she points out these are usually long-term projects. We're talking 3, 5, even 7 years of planning and execution.
So faced with potential short-term tariff chaos, putting a temporary pause on that kind of huge overhaul, well, it just makes sense. It's risk management.
It is. And McLaughlin also made the point that lots of businesses, especially medium and large ones, they're still not really sure about the why behind potential tariffs. What's the end game?
Without knowing the strategy behind it all.
It's really hard to make your own long-term strategic commitments, right? Why commit now if policy could make your plan obsolete or worse, actively harmful later? So you hold off, you pause.
Which, is definitely better than the alternatives, isn't it? Pausing sounds less drastic than, say, canceling everything.
Oh, absolutely. And Ted Pick, he's the head of Morgan Stanley, he made a comment about this. He said, while uncertainty has definitely slowed things down, IPOs, other corporate activities, the feeling right now is more pause versus delete.
Pause versus delete. I like that.
It's a great way to put it, yeah. It suggests things are on hold, not necessarily scrapped altogether.
So companies aren't giving up on growth, they're just waiting for a clearer signal.
That seems to be the idea. Waiting to redeploy capital, waiting to go on those strategic plans again. That optionality is key to this pause.
But there are risks if this goes on too long, surely.
There are. That's the flip side. Ted Pick warned about this too.
What did he say?
Basically, if this adjustment period, this uncertainty just drags on and on, that appetite for doing deals, M&A, for example, it could just fade away.
So the pause becomes permanent.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Or at least the plans get shelved indefinitely. His phrase was, the books get put away.
Ooh, that sounds more final.
It does. It highlights that while a short pause is rational, a really prolonged one could create its own set of problems. Delayed investment can mean less innovation. A long slowdown in deals can hurt overall economic growth.
So even if companies are managing okay now, letting things stay paused indefinitely isn't really a sustainable solution.
Probably not in the long run. It could become quite problematic.
Okay, so let's bring this back to our listener. What does all the CEO talk about pausing actually mean for them?
Well, I think it's a pretty clear signal about the overall economic climate. This widespread caution at the top is likely to trickle down. You might see delays in new projects getting started, maybe companies being more conservative about hiring in some areas, just a generally slower pace of investment and business activity as everyone waits for more clarity.
So connecting it back, this isn't just semantics. Hearing pause more often reflects a real shift.
Definitely. A tangible shift in how companies are behaving, driven by this significant uncertainty. Tariffs are a big part of it, sure, but as we saw with BGSF, there are likely broader worries feeding into it too. It's affecting planning, spending, hiring.
Right across the board.
Yeah, from workforce decisions to big capital investments.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive then, the main takeaway is this increased use of pause by CEOs. It's more than just a word.
It really is. It's like a real-time indicator of significant economic uncertainty driven by things like tariffs, yes, but also wider anxieties.
And it's leading to this widespread caution, hesitation on hiring, on investments.
Exactly. And while pause sounds temporary, right, it implies things will eventually restart.
There's that risk you mentioned, if the uncertainty lasts too long.
Right. A prolonged pause could actually have more lasting negative effects on business activity, on economic expansion. That's the potential downside we need to watch.
That makes sense. Okay, so maybe a final thought for our listeners to mull over.
Go for it.
How might this collective corporate pause be shaping the economy overall? And maybe, What signs should we be looking for? What indicators might tell us when this pause could finally be ending?
Ooh, good questions. And what does this period mean for things like innovation, for future growth when everyone's kind of holding back?
Lots to think about there. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.